Hello and welcome to the Fertility Foundations podcast, where we go into detail about how to prepare the foundations for a healthy pregnancy. We dive deep into the underlying root causes for fertility issues and natural solutions. I want you to know that you're not alone and you're not broken. I hope that by sharing these episodes, it will help you move from feeling overwhelmed and lost to feeling hopeful and empowered to take charge of your own path to parenthood, because there are actually lots of things that you can do to help rewrite your own story. I'm Sandra Greenbank, nutritional therapist, functional medicine practitioner, coach and educator, specializing in fertility, pregnancy and postpartum health. I'm also the founder of the Fertility Nutrition Center, where you can find fully trained experts in nutrition, lifestyle and functional approaches to healthy fertility and pregnancy. You can find more information over at www.fertilitynutritioncenter.org and also book in a free strategy call with one of our experts. Today, I'm speaking to Sam Ferguson about her fertility journey. Sam is our social media manager at FNC, and it was a match made in heaven when I found her, and you're about to find out why. Sam is a former corporate banking professional turned online marketer, specializing in supporting nutritionists and women's health experts with their online marketing and content. After nearly 2 decades navigating intense roles in finance and branding for the international drinks sector, Sam realized her true passion lay elsewhere. It was her journey through autoimmunity and later infertility and IVF that sparked a profound shift in her career trajectory, and once parenthood arrived, she knew she had to make the change and go where her heart needed to be. This podcast is sponsored by Invivo Healthcare, a human microbiome company. Invivo specializes in accurate testing of different microbiomes, such as the gut, vagina, oral and urinary tract, as well as a range of specially curated supplements focused on the microbiomes. They support healthcare providers and their clients navigate the complex world of the human microbiomes and is one of the most used labs and supplements by our fertility specialists. Visit the Invivo website for more information at www.invivohealthcare.com. Now let's get into today's interview with Sam. So thanks, Sam, for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
So for those who don't know you, would you like to just introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, so my name is Sam Ferguson. I'm a digital marketer. I specialise in social media marketing and, well, all online marketing really for nutritionists and women's health experts.
Great. And so the reason why I asked you to come on the show is because you're part of my team. And although I've been interviewing lots of our nutritional therapists, our fertility nutritionists on the podcast, I actually wanted to bring you in as well because the Fertility Nutrition Center is a real group kind of effort, and everybody's really working together and singing from the same hymn sheet. And I specifically actually wanted you to come on board because of, well, once I found out that you've had your own experience, and we'll talk a little bit more about sort of how that's, changed how I feel about my business. But so actually, to start with, would you mind sharing a bit about your own journey, trying to conceive?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have an almost 9-year-old son. So I had IVF treatment to have him. My memory is probably going to be a little bit hazy on some of the details, but I got married when I was 34, started trying to have a baby, as you do, quite sort of usual scenario. And after sort of about 9 months or so, thought, what the hell's going on here? But I mean, the thing is, I didn't ever have any, not that I was aware of anyway, any sort of like hormone issues over the years. I've always had very regular periods, always been quite healthy. And yeah, so it was all a bit of a what's going on for me. Everything was quite confusing. I went to the doctor and they quite quickly got me onto, the road of just the standard tests. I remember a hell of a lot of blood tests and things like that. And this went on for quite a while. So it's probably about 6 month or so sort of testing period, which I suppose is probably quite usual, doing all sorts, my husband as well. And nothing was there. There didn't really appear to be any issues at all. This probably ended up going on for about a year, and I eventually had a laparoscopy, and which is it's quite invasive. And I suppose that was how I was told at the time. You know, this is the MOT. If we're gonna find something, we'll find it by doing this. So I had that, and I woke up from the procedure. And as they do, they come around and, sit by your bed. And basically, the doctor just said, "You're not likely to have children naturally." And I was like, "What?" And he said that I had lots of scar tissue around my abdomen, and my tubes were blocked on partially on one side, but completely on the other. And that was just, I mean, I didn't even know what that meant. It was quite mind blowing at the time. And even prior to that, I'm probably jumping ahead a little bit, because I suppose I was getting frustrated with the wait on the NHS, because you are sort of back and forth a whole lot. I remember just in and out of the fertility clinic. It was in St Albans, and at one point, even all my notes got lost as well, and I had, waiting in waiting rooms, as you do for consultations and stuff. What's the next thing we're going to do? What's the next thing we're going to do? But at one point along that journey, I did also decide, I'm just going to try and, find out privately, see if I can get things moving along. And I remember going to a doctor in Harley Street, and he was just sort of like, "Oh, yeah, we'll test your AMH, and then we'll bring you in for IVF." And I remember being like, "Oh, whoa, that sounds a bit much. Is that all you need to do?" But anyway, then I sort of went back, and I was sort of on the NHS route again, like I said, the laparoscopy, and I was devastated, obviously, and just everything was just very confusing. I just didn't understand what was going on, why it was going on, and I didn't know really where to turn. At the same time, I'm quite a practical person and mind over matter to some degree. So I suppose I decided we had to accept the situation, and quite quickly I was put in touch with a fertility clinic in Hammersmith Hospital. That's where I had my treatment. And I remember going there and having my consultation there, and just sort of that you going through all of my notes and everything. And it was basically like, right, okay, you're going to go and have IVF. So that's what happened with me. And then lo and behold, as well, once I was sort of on that part of the journey, and I mean, this is a good it's probably about 18 months since we'd first started trying for a baby. So I remember following the consultation, I can't remember if there must have been some tests and things done at the IVF clinic. I can't really remember specifically, but then I remember phoning up and getting a cancellation. That was how, kind of quick then the process happened. And yeah, we then went for our IVF. And I mean, stressful as it was, I got pregnant first time. So on reflection, and I suppose as far as an IVF story goes, it was quite straightforward. So yeah, and yeah, I have a son now. So, but it was just a confusing time overall. And even when I look back now, I think, God, I didn't really know what was going on, and I just kind of walking away from once the point where I was given all my injections and things like that. It was all quite surreal. You just sort of walk away from this clinic and you go home with this big bundle of injections. Then all of a sudden it's like the tops of my legs were numb, once you start the IVF protocol and all of that. So yeah, that was my experience.
So I haven't actually heard your entire story. So I'm just thinking back, I'm thinking now, what would I have said to you if you'd come to me and said, I've got I had a laparoscopy, which is when they go in with the little camera.
Yeah.
I've got lots of scarring. I'd be, I mean, if your tubes are blocked, they're blocked. So from a nutrition point of view, I probably would have there's not much we can do in that sense. But our approach would be to ask why. Why is there scarring? Why have they become blocked? I mean, do you have any symptoms of endometriosis, or did you?
I don't think so, no. I didn't ask why, or not enough anyway. I mean, I probably did, but I didn't. I suppose that's how I kind of look back and see that the general medical setting that I was in is that I don't know. It just, to ask why, I just didn't. I never had. I suppose I always had quite heavy, I would say, painful periods, but because they were always quite regular, there wasn't anything else that seemed out of the norm. So no, I don't think I have. I don't know if there was endometriosis. I did at one point during the sort of earlier testing phase, I had a scan, and it was actually the sonographer that turned around and said, "Oh, you've got polycystic ovary syndrome." I'm like, oh, okay. But then when I went onto the IVF clinic, they were like, "No, you don't have that." So do you see what I mean? There was just a whole load of unknown. But I realised something as well that I've just skipped past, because, like you said, what you would say to me, and this was we'll talk about this more, I know, but I suppose this is the bit that I feel bad for myself then, and I'm also a little bit angry as well, because I didn't know to look for help outside of general sort of medical model, if you like. And I wish I did, because I feel like that would have helped me a whole lot, just psychologically more than anything. Like you said, I think IVF was a given anyway, but the psychological side of it, I could really have done with that support. And what I do remember doing, and this was at the point where I was told about PCOS, but like I say, I don't really know if that was actually the case anyway. But I remember I just started furiously Googling, and that's when I discovered Marilyn Glenville, and I just ordered one of her books, and it was about PCOS, and consumed it. I think I read it in about a day or something, and I was like, right, okay, this is what I need to do. I mean, I've always I suppose I've always understood about food and the sort of eating well for health and stuff like that anyway. So I think just having some of that information definitely sent me down my own road of discovery. And even the fact that I was doing IVF, I remember thinking to myself, I have to do everything I can now to make this work, because I was very aware of the stats and things like that. And I suppose I was 36 at the time. So, I suppose I just said to myself, this has to work. So I have to do everything. And that goes for Scott, my husband, as well. It was obviously, even with him, I mean, I knew even less about the male side of things. I mean, minimal, but because his tests and things had come back and he was just told, yeah, everything's fine, which I suppose I now know fine doesn't necessarily mean ideal, does it? But he benefited from Marilyn Glenville's teachings as well. So, so I suppose I did what I could. And I mean, in a way, the stuff that I learned then is probably still benefiting me now. And I would say that's just where a kind of natural interest came from as well, with just nutrition and good health and stuff like that. Because I suppose I could feel the benefits. That's the thing.
Yeah. And your partner's a chef, isn't he?
Yeah. So I suppose exactly. Food was a big part of our life, always has been. I've lived with him now for almost 21 years. He's taught me to cook over the years. So I suppose that made it all so much more doable as well to eat well. So that was definitely an advantage. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, if you'd have come to me, like I said, scarring to the point where it's blocked up the tubes, like that's just one of those things where we go, oh, it's like it's just one of the main things that we probably can't reverse the process. But we can look at the underlying factors as to what might be going on. And, and your sonographer said that you might have polycystic ovary syndrome. I mean, you can't diagnose that from one scan, but, you need to have more than one, you need to have a blood test as well that would confirm it, or you would have like long cycles or missing cycles, for example. But you can have polycystic ovaries without having the syndrome. But, we would look at other things like your family history. Is there any autoimmunity potentially that might be playing into it? Are there any gut issues? And, any other symptoms like skin problems or anything like that could sort of give us some kind of indication that this, where to go next, because we have a sort of systems approach, as it were. So we're looking at sort of the microbiome, which is all connected throughout the body, or we're looking at the nervous system, or we're looking at the hormone, the endocrine system. So, whereas the conventional medical side, they would be looking at your ovaries and going, okay, well, we're just going to take the ovaries and treat them completely separate from the rest of the body, which, I think that you're coming from the same point of view as us. They're not separate.
Yeah.
We're not kind of organs in like they're just not separate entities. They're all connected.
Yeah. And I tell you what I did have growing up. I had quite bad psoriasis, which I experienced I think when I was a teenager, it sort of came on for the first time, and I had that for a long time on and off. But again, I would never have made any correlation to do with that. That was always just treated in a very sort of, symptom prescription sort of model, obviously. So, yeah, I wonder if there was some autoimmunity issues going on there as well. I'd say it's probably quite likely. I mean, it's quite common, isn't it? So
yeah, psoriasis is one of those things. I mean, it's another one of those sort of mysterious things that nobody supposedly knows where it comes from, but it's something that we see a lot and that we can
and nobody in my family has it. Well, I'm aware of anyway. So so that's in the early 90s. All of a sudden, psoriasis. What's this? And it was just I can remember just being given coal tar to bathe in. Yeah, and then going into
do that anymore.
Smelling of it. Horrible.
So coming out of that experience then, and I agree that I think that if you've been told that there's an issue and you're having treatment, I mean, I don't know if you were lucky enough to get treatment on the NHS back then.
Yeah, I was.
In Hertfordshire, you don't get any now.
Oh, really? Oh my God.
It depends a bit on where you live. It's a bit of a postcode lottery, but a lot of places now allow you one cycle, which I think, it's more likely to not work the first time than it is. And I think that that's where you really do have an opportunity to stack the odds in your favor, not just because of the cost of potentially having to pay, but also, the psychological impact and the financial impact and, the impact on your relationships and your work, everything. So,
it was really hard. Yeah. I've got a feeling going back then, it was that there was three.
There used to be three here.
Yeah. But even the thought of doing it more than once, I have to say, it's like, So, I mean, it's not, you don't want to do that. Of course not.
Yeah. And now you work with us. So we have a social media account, I suppose, as the Fertility Nutrition Centre, which is managed by you. You sort of create all our content, and with the help of our practitioners, and there's about 20 of us, I think. And we also have a Facebook group, which you're a member of, and we ask each other questions constantly in that Facebook. We support each other every day in there and posting things, and, obviously all anonymously. But, does anyone know the best consultant for this, or, whatever it might be. So you're, I imagine, exposed in a way that other people are not, and sort of picking up things.
Yeah.
Maybe, or seeing things. So how sort of your exposure to us and everything that you've learned so far, how is that kind of, how are you looking back and thinking I might have done something differently now?
I think I would have definitely tried to find help a bit sooner. That would have been the first thing. And I, like I said before, I suppose regardless of, me having to have IVF, I think I could have just done with that psychological support, the guidance. I mean, like I say, I was doing a load of learning and eating all this wonderful food, but it would have just been so helpful to have, a specialist on my team, sort of thing. What I realise now is, and it's not even now, I mean, I realised this as soon as I started working with you guys. It's like, oh my God, there's just so much nonsense sort of, paraded around online and things like that. And I suppose that's why I love what I do, because being in that place where that you're working with the best, but B, it's the real deal. It's like, this stuff is scientific, and to me that's what's really important. And there's so much kind of noise in the media, on TV shows, forums. Oh my God, don't even get me started on, I don't know if I should mention the name, but there's a big forum that I can remember asking questions in all those years ago, and it was very unhelpful. So yeah, that's the beauty of what I'm exposed to now, and I like to think that comes out in my work, because one of the things that I feel very passionately about is, I suppose, is to help my former self. That's who I think about myself a lot of the time. It's almost a bit selfish, really. I want to help other women not go through that kind of confusion and just going around the houses when they don't need to. It's the real information is out there, I suppose, and that's part of why I love what I do, and that's what I get exposed to, is the real stuff. So,
and I think that it's really interesting the way you sort of what you mentioned there, because you're not my first social media manager, and I've had one or two before, and they would want to put out all this information, and they would be like looking at other accounts and taking ideas from other accounts. And I was like, no, but yeah, that got lots of likes and that's a very popular topic, but actually it's not, it's not rooted in science. It's a bit, I don't even believe that it works. And, and also it was sort of, they were using a lot of exclamation marks. And I was like, can you stop using exclamation marks? And kind of, can you stop using these kind of sensationalists sort of ways of writing? And it was all, and they were like, yeah, but that's what gets the likes and that's what gets the follows. And I'm like, I don't want to freak people out, and I don't want to sort of shame people or frighten people into feeling that they're not doing enough and they can only get the information by working with us. It's like, it doesn't sit right with me, and the numbers are not the numbers are just not a priority for me. I just want to get the right information out there. And I don't really know how to kind of explain it, but it was a battle for me. I was like, oh God, what did they just put out? And I would have to quickly go in and kind of edit, or, and it just felt like clickbait a lot of the time, or they would make me sort of dance and point. And I was like, we're not that type of people. Like, we're serious. We are, we're not medical professionals, but we work closely with medical professionals. And I just found that, credibility kind of went out the window for the sake of like an extra, for the numbers. And I think partly also they were young as well, and that's great. And they're enthusiastic, and they really wanted to, they were passionate as well, but they didn't have, I think, with life experience, or particularly with your experience, you have that understanding and the knowledge where this can be really triggering for somebody. So we're going to change the wording for this.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when we first spoke, actually, I always come back to this sometimes when I'm, if I'm writing for you guys, and you said about, this is like a virtual hug. We want people to know that we're there for them. We want people to know that we see them, that we understand them. So I suppose I always try to convey that, because that's the thing. I suppose you could say this maybe about many different industries, but unless you've had experience with something like this, I just don't. It's so difficult to understand what it feels like to go through any kind of infertility. I mean, for me, I look back on my own story, and it feels like such a long time. And like I say, even my memory, it's not something I think about all the time at all. My memory's a bit patchy, but when I do think about it, it's still there. And actually, a lot of the emotions that I felt when I was in that phase of like, am I going to have a baby? Is it going to happen for me? And why me? And it's not fair. And I'm the only one. All of that stuff. Actually, I can still feel a bit like that sometimes, which is so nobody can take that away from you either. But yeah, that's. And then when it comes to the communications and the marketing, I think that's why it makes good sense to work with somebody who's got personal experience, because it's such a sensitive thing. It really is. And when it comes to things like the likes and the views, and I mean, this is all just the popularity stuff. And I mean, there is a place for that for certain types of accounts, but that's not what we're here to do. What we're here to do ultimately is to reach people and to help them and to understand them and to give them something. I mean, not everybody that we reach is going to necessarily be an FNC client as such, but if we can help them in some way, I mean, to me, that's what matters, rather than just the clickbaity stuff. It's not about that at all, is it? It's
No, and actually that whole
surrounded by that as well.
I know it can be so kind of really, it once you start thinking about your numbers, and it's just not good for anybody to sort of try.
So negative, it really is, because in the end, it means nothing.
No.
When I think about just this whole, I mean, I talk a lot in my own work about sort of like when I speak to nutritionists and business owners about trying to sort of take their focus away from those things, because I mean, in the end, it's such low value. That's how I look at it. Or if you're running a legitimate business and you're providing a wonderful service like what we do, what our practitioners do, it's somebody clicking like it doesn't necessarily mean much, whereas somebody contacting you with a question about something that you've posted about, or asking you about, I don't know, say like a supplement or something like that, the sorts of questions that we get a lot, those are the things that are important, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to help.
And not everyone is able to work with us,
No,
on a
exactly.
one-on-one or 2-to-1, and on a, because there's a cost attached. A lot of our practitioners do offer kind of lower cost group programs, which I think are absolutely amazing. I've ran them before myself, and it's incredible. I mean, I sort of shocked myself with the results that, I was like, I couldn't believe that I didn't need to work with people one-on-one and they could get these spectacular results. It was just amazing. I didn't have time to run it, but a lot of our practitioners do. So that's another option. But also, I cannot even tell you how many people have contacted me and have said, I follow your advice. I did, I started taking vitamin D, or I checked my vitamin D. I got rid of all the plastics from my house, and I started eating more vegetables, and, we're taking some supplements or whatever, and we're now pregnant, and I couldn't, and it's like, it's not always something complicated. Sometimes it's those small things. And we do put out a lot of information. We've got our blogs, we've got our social media account, we've got our email, and that's it. It's just trying to get the information out there any way we can, and, be as helpful as we can. And it's a tricky balance, isn't it? But, I was just so pleased to have found you.
Oh.
But you don't only do fertility anyway, do you? And, I know that you've...
Nutrition in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose I love the whole fertility thing, but I do work with a few other fertility nutritionists. But I mean, all aspects of nutrition. I mean, I'm a woman now in my 40s, and I'm very much going through perimenopause. So, even that's quite big in my world, again, personal experience, I suppose. So yeah, I mean, various aspects of nutrition, but fertility is just so close to my heart. And it's interesting, I just wanted to touch on what you said there a moment ago about helping people that even aren't necessarily going to become a paying customer. And that's, yeah, I feel that as well, because it's not about a transaction, is it? It's about just reaching as many people as possible. There will be clients, of course, but wouldn't it be amazing if we could just reach everybody that needs us anyway? That's how I see it. So,
and also getting the word out there. Yeah, and that was actually one of my main sort of reasons for starting the fertility nutrition center is, making sure that there are really adequately trained fertility nutritionists out there, because there aren't any other courses that sort of prepare you. And also there's the support for those who decide to join the Fertility Nutrition Center group of practitioners. But there are other who have also had training. They're just not continuously getting training. But actually the work that we're able to do together in putting the word out there and really educating the public, and going to exhibiting in places like the fertility show, and making sure that we're out there together rather than just sitting alone and working at home on our own, because it just is so much harder to reach people when you're just working alone. And you've got some other personal experience of other areas of nutrition that have been really helpful as well in this year, I guess, or in the last 18 months or so.
yeah. Well, another big thing happened in my life. So on Boxing Day 2022, my husband had a stroke, and it's a life-changing stroke. So that's like about 14 months ago now. He's still in recovery. And I have to say, I do feel my exposure to all things nutrition and just holistic health in general, holistic therapies in general, has really helped in how I've supported him, but also just how I've coped as well. Because I mean, it's quite a crazy story what happened, really. I mean, yes, he had a stroke, but it happened while we were abroad, and he had to stay in hospital in Spain for about 6 weeks, and I had to stay there with him, obviously, and find a hotel, and was just sort of back and forth to the hospital every day. Like, everything just stopped. I mean, it was complete sort of like carpet being whipped from beneath your feet scenario. But I feel like my working with nutritionists really helped me in how I managed that situation. I mean, it's even the very first day I was in the hospital and trying to kind of get to see him, and it was all, as there is, like visiting hours weren't very practical. And I remember just turning up at the hospital, and then all of a sudden I was like, well, I'm hungry, I need to eat, and just being like, well, I need to make sure I eat the right things. I could really feel myself. Obviously I was very stressed. It was a really difficult time, and it was very tiring as well, physically exhausting, mentally exhausting. And I suppose I just had that kind of teaching in my head about, just prioritizing my own health and eating well, so that then I could do what I needed to do for him. And I really feel like that helped me. And also now, since we're home, so obviously now this has been well over a year that he's home and he's back in the house and stuff, and cooking for him and things like that. So, but luckily, because he's a chef, and because I suppose our experience maybe as well with IVF and just eating well in general, he's been very receptive to all of that. But I really believe it has helped him. And I think it continues to help him on his recovery. But also now, because of him having the stroke, I suppose my exposure to things around brain health as well, and the link between nutrition and brain health. I mean, I've learned all sorts, and it's absolutely fascinating, and to some degree quite similar to how I feel about fertility, because or sort of fertility health. I just don't feel that there's just not enough about this going on in the world. we don't look after our brains. We don't look after our fertility. I mean, neither of those things, and other things as well. We don't look after our guts. It's so yeah. That's been quite eye-opening as well. And but I suppose overall, even though that was a really difficult situation and continues to be, it was a horrendous thing to happen. But I like to try and think that some good stuff has come out of that as well. It's even just that understanding a bit more about our own health. I mean, yeah, I suppose I feel like my health improved when I went through infertility, but I feel like even now in this last year, it's probably improved even more. And actually, I mean, I can never prove this, obviously, but my own experience sort of starting perimenopause as well, I would say I actually think that's been impacted as well in a positive way. And I'm probably managing things quite well. So
It's interesting what you say about the brain, and I know that his doctors have been, quite pleased with his progress as
yeah, he's
well.
made
And
remarkable progress.
yeah,
Yeah. So
but
yeah.
one of the main things that we work on, if anybody's struggling, or if anyone's periods are not, or ovulation is not happening regularly, or if there's a hormone imbalance, is actually brain health that we focus on. You might not know that as a client, but we're looking at what's going on with the brain, because we want to make sure that the brain is always listening, is listening to your breath, is listening to everything that is going on, is listening to your thoughts. And we know this now, like the studies that prove this. And what we want to do is send the right signals to the brain to ensure the brain knows that you're safe. Because if the brain knows that you're safe, it's going to put out less stress hormones, it's going to put out less prolactin, which means that your ovaries are then instructed to actually ovulate, because if you're stressed, and your body has a mechanism of actually protecting you from pregnancy if it's not the right time, if you're in a starvation mode, if you're very stressed, if you're running away from a dangerous animal, if you're whatever it might be. And the breath is a signal that we can use. Your thoughts are signals that we can use, because your thoughts impact your actions and your hormone levels. And so that's actually one of the main focus of, and of course, nutrition. The brain is mostly made up of fats. We need to make sure that you've got enough omega-3 fats, and also the gut-brain connection. They're intimately connected. And so, we'll work on your gut function to ensure that your brain's very happy. And it's just interesting, although we're talking about completely different things in our social media, that is one of the main focus of our work.
Yeah.
And yeah, brain health, I think, for women really is something that we should be focusing it on in our 30s and 40s, because we're at risk for dementia and all of these things. And I think that, the lack of sleep that we go through from just sort of usually more often than not being the ones to manage the family or the home or the, any medical, the IVF, whatever it is that goes on in your life, a lot of the time is like we take that emotional sort of charge, and that we're the ones who are reading the books, and and the impact on sleep, and the impact on the hormonal impact as well, on what's happening in later life, and your diet as well, because we set the stage for lifestyle and diet related diseases 10 years before before you have any symptoms. So this is a slow burn. So I think it's really important, actually, especially for women, to really think about their diet and lifestyle and how they live, and not becoming kind of obsessive about it. But
Yeah.
we're not invincible.
No, exactly. But I suppose we live in times where, we can do it all. We can have it all of that sort of teaching. And I mean, my belief, and I speak personally, but I think it's a general thing, a bit of a general problem, is that we're just quite disconnected with ourselves, aren't we? We're not listening to ourselves. We're not, like a bit like what I did all those years ago. We're not questioning ourselves. And there's a lot to be said for just feeling all right and calm and peaceful, whereas we sort of have these kind of, when I think back to my prior career years ago and working in really sort of fast-paced office environments, the stress and everything is just up, 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 and it doesn't work with health. It's like I personally feel for years that I was just walking around, just not feeling great in myself. And I think that's quite a general.
It becomes normal. It's normalized, just like, feeling bloated all the time. I think,
Yeah.
thinking back to when I used to have a corporate career, it was just normalized. If you said, "Oh, feeling really bloated," it's like everyone else is bloated. So it's like, okay. And you're thinking, "Oh, that's just normal."
Yeah. It's terrible, isn't it?
But then you don't, it means that you do nothing about it. And actually, running my own business, like that's stressful too in lots of ways. And I think if anyone, I know there are a lot of nutritionists that are listening to my podcast, and, I had a big barrier to break through to actually get help in my business, and getting a social media manager was like this huge barrier. I was like, am I going to spend this money on something I could actually do myself? I can do it. I can do it. But, when I tried to do it, I think I posted twice in a year. I can do it. I just don't have I had to realize that I didn't have the time. And then
that's the whole point, isn't it? It's nobody is. This is the trouble. We're made to feel like we should be able to do all of these things, and being it, yeah, you can do it. That's, of course you can do it, but there's only so many hours in the day. That's how I look at it. There's only so much energy one person has,
Yeah. And the thing is as well, I think having you come on board, and, when I had the other social media manager, I have to say they actually made more work for me. They were like, look at the, producers had to have a meeting with them every week. It was just like, I was just like at the end of my tether. And then you came on board, and I was like, sometimes I go a week and I don't even log into Instagram. And it's so, it's like, it's life changing. It's absolutely changed my life. And the way it's freed up so much time for me to do other things. And I don't have to worry, I just think it's like, if anyone's thinking I need help in my business, like, just do it, because you can go out and earn money doing the things you're good at.
Yeah.
If you have someone looking after the other things.
Yeah. And also it gets to the point where it's like you saying, oh, I can do it, but you're just going to be spreading yourself so thinly then, aren't you? It just doesn't work, I suppose.
It is a separate job.
Yeah.
It's actually a separate job.
Exactly. And even just that splitting from, taking off one hat and putting on another. I mean, that's quite hard work, quite tiring. Yeah.
And so when did you change your career then from?
Well, I was in banking, foreign exchange banking, and that was full on, to say the least. And I had every intention of going back to that. And in the end, it was just really practical reasons that I decided not to, because I worked with the Asian markets in foreign exchange. I think I just said that. And I had to be in the office in the middle of the city for like 7:30 in the morning. So
that's really bad for you. That's really bad for you. I mean, it's really bad for your circadian rhythm.
Yeah. Well, on reflection, exactly. And I've like I say, I've probably always been generally quite healthy, but now I look back and you can see the things that were dragging you down in a way. And that was definitely one of them. I mean, my stress levels, even when I wasn't seen like a senior member of staff or anything like that, I probably didn't care, but I can even feel it now thinking about it. I remember I just used to feel stress in my face, like my skin would be burning every single day. But yeah, so going back to that after having a baby was not I can't say it was the most appealing prospect, but I had to work and it was kind of what I expected I was going to do. And I did want to go back on a part-time basis, but it was just, in the end, it was the fact that I couldn't get out of this being there at that time in the morning. And how was that going to work with childcare? It just wasn't. So in the end, I resigned. And after I resigned, so I'd done my year's maternity, I resigned, and I was very, very panicked about this situation because, like I say, I needed to work and I wanted to work, I wanted a job, but I felt very like as if I didn't have anything much to offer. It was kind of, I was like, what am I going to do? Just can't visualize myself going back into anything like that, the sort of corporate world. It didn't feel right. And at that point, it's funny how I've ended up really doing what I do, because I was on no social media. I mean, I did have a Facebook page from years ago, but I had, disconnected it or whatever, I wasn't visible on Facebook even. I'd never been on Instagram, LinkedIn. I didn't even know what the hell that was. Twitter. Oh my goodness, you might as well be speaking Japanese. And I remember a friend of mine said, well, if you're going to get a new job, you should get yourself on LinkedIn. And even that, I was like, oh my God, what? And I have to have a photo? And she was like, just get yourself on there and just fill out your career history. And, you just get, just do it. Anyway, so I did do it. And that's all I did. I think I did go for a few interviews. I can't remember that, but I did, but nothing really worked out. And then one day I saw this ad pop up on LinkedIn and was like, are you a mum? I can't remember the exact wording, but something like, are you a mum on maternity leave? Would you like to train in some digital skills and, have your own business, blah, 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 all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'll do that. And, you work from home, it was the whole picture. I didn't believe a word of it, I have to say, but I clicked the button and then read this whole thing. And it was a company called Digital Mums. We've talked about this before. And Digital Mums, they don't actually exist anymore. Wonderful, wonderful people, two women who started up this business to for people like me to retrain and to be able to work for yourself and to work from home and to, freelance, all of that nice stuff. And I had to have like a telephone interview. And I remember the guy on the phone, he said to me, this will change your life. I remember thinking, will it change my life? Like that's like, could my life really be changed? And I suppose lo and behold, it has changed, because then I got accepted onto the course. It was a 6-month course and it was really intensive. And at that point I had a small, I had a baby. My son was, I can't remember, just over a year, I suppose he would have been. And I was studying every night, every time he napped. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And at that point, it was I just had this vision of, I can do this, I can work with businesses. And I was learning all this lovely stuff. Social media was very different then as well. So I suppose it's quite different to what I'm doing now. But I learned Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of the kind of the psychology, the tech. And part of how we went through the course was we had to start a grassroots campaign, so you actually did it. And I created my and I chose to theme mine food, obviously. I mean, everything with me is about food. And that's what I did. And then after I completed the course, I teamed up with another, like a peer, Helen. We're still very close now. And we very quickly started getting work together. We started our agency, Some Like It Social, which is what we still were sort of trading as when I first met you as well. But since then, I suppose I've transitioned into nutrition, which is just where I feel I belong. So, but that all started with you. So it was, I remember when I don't remember who it was, but it was just sort of somebody in my network.
I asked somebody, actually, have you heard of Santa in Hertfordshire? Santa's like a business support thing. Anyway, I asked them if they knew somebody. They had somebody who did social media, and she said, I'll ask my network. And I think she must have asked on some sort of group.
Yeah.
Digital Mums group. And I said, does anybody know anyone who might have, who's a mum or who's had fertility problems? I just wanted somebody with a bit more life experience than the young ones who I'd been working with. And that, I think you were the first person I spoke to, and I was like,
Yeah.
found her.
I remember it well because I remember when I got your contact details emailing you, and you emailed me straight back, and I can remember and I was like, this is brilliant. This is brilliant. It was almost like the stars were aligning a little bit for me. So,
but what I find interesting as well is obviously I know that you work with some of the other nutritionists or some other fertility nutritionists, but actually all of our accounts look very different online. So you're still like able to really look at who we are as a people separately, and somehow convey that into whatever then goes out online, which I think is so nice. And so I'm going to ask you, firstly, have you got any advice for anyone who's trying to conceive and who's listening and thinking, where am I going to get? How am I going to find a fertility nutritionist? Or what, it's just, I'm so confused about everything that's out there. What should I do?
I suppose I can, from the very bottom of my heart, say, please check out the Fertility Nutrition Centre, first of all. Make sure, but aside from that, there is help out there. And also, I would say as well, check the credentials of who you're looking at. This is the big thing. Stop following all of the experts. So I'm using my inverted commas when I say that, on Instagram, and find out who are the people who are credible and best suited to help you. And then when you find your practitioner, or when you contact a practitioner, I suppose ultimately work with the people that you gel with and you like. But check those credentials, like make sure you're working with someone who's registered or certified to help you. I think there's lots of very well-meaning generalists out there, but I think with something so sensitive and specific like fertility, you need to find those the right people.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, because there's so many people out there who have really beautiful websites and really amazing Instagram accounts. But actually, if you scratch the surface, there isn't the training, there isn't necessarily the experience. They might be very newly qualified and have no training.
Yeah.
And, and I'm not saying that they're not going to be helpful, but just make sure, because, it's very easy to, well, not easy, but you can't put something out there that looks really professional without actually having the credentials behind you. And what about, so if for the nutritionists then who are listening and thinking, I wonder if I should get some social media advice, what should they do? What are the different things that you can do to help them? Because it's not just working one-on-one with people, is it? Sort of managing their account for them.
I don't do so much of that now. It's more what I do a lot of these days is sort of I work in a coaching capacity with Instagram, because Instagram is our home as nutritionists, I suppose. So I do sort of what I call clarity sessions, which is a 90-minute session where, wherever you are on your sort of Instagram business journey, it's a kind of audit, it's a troubleshooting, and it's a getting some strategy in place and just some general understanding and confidence. I also then can work ongoing with people on a sort of retainer basis as well, following on from that. So again, but everything is very bespoke that I do. So I suppose it depends on what the individual needs. And just going back to what you said before about how the people that I work with and how everybody's very different. And that's for me, everything is about a relationship. It's about person. I'm not here to just give general sort of blanket advice and, kind of like, oh, we need to be doing this, we need to be doing that. I mean, there's lots of things that, yes, we do need to be doing, but ultimately, a service like being a nutritionist to me is so much about the individual. So it's conveying that expertise along with that personality and that and as an individual.
I agree, because you don't want to be that kind of just same, you know, even though we're all saying the same things, but it's
Exactly.
about saying it your way and connecting with the right
Yeah.
people for you.
Yeah, exactly. And also it's about saying things your way, saying things clearly, not trying to be everything to everyone with your Instagram profile as well. And I think that's what you know, Instagram is a very noisy place. I would always be inclined to say to people, if you're feeling a little bit like, what do I do, or overwhelmed, you know, maybe step away from Instagram a little bit and get back to you, what your expertise are, and think about your clients as well. You know, the people that you work with, how they are when they come to you, you know, and ask yourself questions like, what do they need to know? What do they need to feel? Then obviously there's lots of tech and strategy talk and things like that that can happen after that. But I think getting that sort of what you're saying and who you're saying it to and how you're saying it established just with yourself first is where I would say to start. Yeah, but also a little bit like the advice that I said about somebody looking for a fertility support, you know, check the credentials of who you're listening to or who you're taking advice from, because again, you know, with social media there's so much noise out there, and I mean most of it is just, you can just ignore it. That's what I would say, you know, as long as you're, you know, how I feel is it's more important that you speak to your client or your potential client than being the best on social media. That's my attitude, you know. It's like, I'm not the best on social media, but, and you know, because why do you need to be that? That's, you know, so it's,
Yeah, I mean, you know, these are some of the things, because I think that if you're looking, and also, I mean, if I can give somebody advice, it's like, stop looking at everyone else and stop looking at the accounts that make you feel bad about yourself. Because you know, I'm sort of also sort of heading sort of I think I'm 45 this year, and I'm thinking, you know, I found myself thinking, I don't look like those really pretty young nutritionists. And what have I got to offer? You know, who wants to see my kind of like saggy face on Instagram? But actually, do you know what? Like, I've got something to offer.
of course
And
you
so,
do,
you
and
know,
that's
so, and Sam always goes, oh, you put a reel out. And I'm like, yeah, I washed my hair today. So I felt like able to go on Instagram. But, you know, why should we feel that
I
I can only
know.
go on there if I wash my hair? And you know, I'm so against using filters. So I'm like, I won't use a filter, because I just don't want to be one of those people that perpetuates this idea that you have to look perfect. But I still feel inside that I can't go on if I don't look
Yeah, no,
healthy,
no,
or,
I'm with
you
you.
know?
Yeah, yeah. And that's the negative side of, yeah, that I don't know if that, I think that exists for everyone really. It's, and these are the things I don't like about social media, but I suppose I always try to think about the positives, think about the people that you're here to help, think about the importance of what you're saying, and you know, and also you have the right to be there, you know, you have the right to be there at that table and promote your business and talk about the wonderful work that you do. So, but yeah, it is shut out that noise. I suppose that's a big part of the advice, isn't it? Because the trouble is, if you just go onto Instagram, I mean, I do it myself as well, and you start the scroll, you know, on the one hand, there will be some nice, helpful things that you'll see, or entertaining things, funny things, whatever it may be. But there's also just an overload of stuff that you didn't ask for. And I think that does have a little bit of a negative effect. So,
Yeah, that's really hard. And also, yeah, I mean, I can't, it's also like when my food photos don't look good enough. But I'm just like, I'm not a food photographer. Yeah, that's
no.
like a third job that you have to sort of master before. But you don't just do social media, do you? You do websites as well, don't you?
Yes,
Yeah.
so I build Squarespace websites, and which I love doing actually. So yeah, so again, I've been doing that for about 5 or 6 years. Yeah, Squarespace, and that's sort of self-taught as Squarespace is, and
I've seen a few of them now and they look really good. So
Thank you. Yeah, I really like doing it. And again, I like the fact that now I suppose I'm specializing in the field where I just feel so at home. And I think that comes through in the websites as well, because just understanding language and just what needs to be there, and how things need to be presented, how things need to flow, and all of that sort of thing. So
yeah, the customer journey, just making
yeah,
it clearer.
exactly.
So how do people get in touch with you? How can they find you?
They can find me on Instagram. What's Eating Her is my handle, and my website is sam-ferguson.co.uk.
Great. Thanks so much, Sam. I think it's been such a lovely chat with you.
Oh, it's been lovely. Thank you.
I really enjoyed this chat with Sam, and I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode. Please like, share, save and rate this podcast if you find it useful, as it helps us reach more people. And if you're looking for a fertility specialist to support you, our practitioners can be contacted over at www.fertilitynutritioncentre.org. They will offer a free strategy call to help you decide on your best next steps on your journey. Thank you for listening.